will now call the meeting to order. If you could please pay attention to Councilmember Cohen for the invocation to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please rise if you're able.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to invite up Pastor Jim Hohen. Now, I know it sounds similar, but it is with an H. He and his wife have lived in Topeka for 30 years. Before retiring in 2006, he was president of the Kansas-Nebraska Conference of Seventh-day Adventists with the headquarters here in town on Urish Road. This responsibility was the oversight of churches and church-sponsored schools in this two-state territory. Prior to this position, he served as pastor, including cities of Omaha, Nebraska, Boulder, and Denver, Colorado, and the Washington, D.C. area. He also served as vice chairman of the board of Shawnee Mission Medical Center in Kansas City. Pastor Hohen.
Thank you so much, and I would just like to say to the mayor and the council members here how much my wife and I enjoy Topeka. When we retired here from my work in '06, we could have moved anywhere we wanted to, and Boulder, Colorado is pretty enticing. The people who live there think they died and went to heaven, but it wasn't quite that simple. But anyway, I just want you to know we love Topeka, we chose to stay here, and we enjoy it very much, and thank you for all you do to make it great. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you that you're the great creator. You're the one who gives us life. You're the one who directs us. And tonight we thank you for this city council. Thank you for our mayor and each one who serves. Thank you for the efforts made to make this community, this city, great. A pleasant place to live, a safe place. And tonight, as they take up the agenda, we do pray that you will guide and direct in the decisions that must be made. Thank you that we can trust a God who, through history, has been a God of organization, one who helped organize cities and communities. And thank you that today we can also trust you to lead and direct here in Topeka. Thank you for the regulations that we have. Thank you for the generosity. Thank you for the good things that happen in this city. And just pray that you'll continue to lead and bless. And especially this evening we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With the items of the meeting, I am going to ask Deputy Mayor if his wife is here. Okay. That being the case, Deputy Mayor, could you please ask your beautiful spouse to join us?
If my beautiful spouse would please join me.
Like that? Like that. So this is the way it works. We bring you guys over. So if some of the council members could please assist Councilwoman Ortiz. Oh, Karen. They're over here. Oh, they're over here. So we know that Councilmember Jensen, as you can see, is expecting, or at least the better half of Councilmember Jensen is expecting. And he was very wise and fooled his beautiful bride by making her think that we were here to celebrate him as a deputy mayor. However, we have a very special occasion because we're celebrating you expanding our population. So the body of the council so appreciates the work that you and your spouse do for the community, and your council got together to just give you guys a little memento of our love for you all, and just to wish you guys the best of luck with the new bundle of joy.
Now, who's going to tell me how to use all this stuff?
You've got our numbers. Yes.
I just want to say I hope the baby's not too big for this, because last week we were told, well, yeah, moves. Congratulations, and I think we've met our, no, that was last year, our goal, that we were trying to increase our numbers.
So in typical Council Deputy Mayor Jensen words, here are your presents.
I just want to say thank you all and tell you, Amber, how very proud I am and how beautiful you are, and I can't wait to be your husband and welcome a new baby Joy.
I want to acknowledge Councilwoman Ortiz for her work, and Liz in the back for helping coordinate and herd all the cats so that this little token of love was possible. So thank you so much for your ladies' leadership. That being said, we now proceed with the roll call.
Mayor De Leysa,
Here.
Council Members Hill,
Here.
Phillip, Clear,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Padilla, Jensen,
Present.
Mays,
Here.
Cohen,
Here.
and Lesser.
Here.
We now move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2019 Mater Dei Irish Fest. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2019 St. Patrick's Day Street Party. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting the Celtic Fox an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning those prohibitions. D are minutes of the regular meeting of January 8, 2019, and there are no applications.
We have heard the consent agenda. What is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion by Councilwoman Ortiz. We have a second by Councilman Emerson. Do we have any comments or discussion? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to the action items. Item 3A, if the clerk would read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout granting a non-exclusive franchise agreement to Extenet Systems Incorporated to construct and maintain its facilities in the public right-of-way as a wireless infrastructure provider.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, governing body. We discussed this item at the last meeting. Since then, we've had some communication with Councilmember Lesser regarding some questions that he had. So we provided the information in that regard, and we stand ready if there are any other questions and seek your approval of this item.
It's the pleasure of the body. Councilwoman Ortiz makes a motion. Councilwoman Clear seconds that motion. Do we have any discussion? Councilwoman Clear.
I did read through this, but when is this going to start? Like, when are they going to actually begin this?
I'm not sure. Councilwoman, I'm not sure exactly what their start time was. Did they explain, Mary? No. No, ma'am, they did not mention what their start time was. We can contact them and see if they have a
I mean, is it 5 years
projected
from now or
start.
tomorrow or?
I would not expect it to be that long, but we'll try and figure out what their expected start date is.
Okay.
Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the back and forth from council members as well as legal. I think we need to do this from time to time. If council member Lesser doesn't have anything further, I don't want to run over that, but in looking through it, it seemed like to the extent that was there, the possibility for damages were there, performance bonds are there, the right of the city to speak up if somehow whatever is happening in the right-of-way gets beyond public health and safety, allows us to intervene and so on. So there might be something missing, but I thought it was quite well done and acceptable. Thank you.
Councilmember Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today I had some conversations with Ms. Robertson, and I do have some concerns still in regards to our franchise agreement as a whole. However, I don't know that this is the time, this actual ordinance here is the time to do that. So we've discussed getting together at a future time with the city manager and talking about what we can do to look into that, so we do make sure that we do protect ourselves moving forward. And I'm satisfied with that and for approval on this ordinance here as it stands. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Seeing no further discussion, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 3117 Southwest Topeka Boulevard from M1 two-family dwelling district to C2 commercial district and OS1 open space district.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Finder will cover any issues.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, governing body. This proposal is a rezoning for a expansion of McDonald's at 3117 Southwest Topeka Boulevard. The key issues here were, since it's already zoned for commercial, there was a minor expansion to the west here into M1 residential zoning. So in reality, what ended up happening is we went from an 80-foot buffer between the neighborhood to now a 22-foot buffer that will be zoned permanently open space. So that was something that we were able to make compatible with this and accommodate the expansion while protecting the neighborhood and area to the west. We did not have any public comment to the contrary in terms of opposition or issues that this would bring forth. So we stand before you to recommend approval and ask for a motion for to approve the ordinance.
We have heard discussion. Do we have a motion? What is the pleasure of the body? Councilman Lesser.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Councilman Lesser. We have a second by the Deputy Mayor. Additional comments? Councilwoman Claire.
Is there a set buffer that we try to keep? And if so, what is that?
Councilwoman Claire, there really is not a set buffer per se. Generally, that's what a setback is for, which in most zoning districts, it's anywhere from 25 to 30 feet. Here, the building setback itself will be much, much farther than that. The parking lot buffer or parking lot setback will be 22 feet. So, and it will be landscaped and fenced. So that's how we sort of mitigate the parking lot impacts when it's that close. But 22 feet with landscaping and fencing actually is good.
So if you have 22 feet, does the landscaping take up like 10 and then it really goes down to?
No, the fencing, it would be, the landscaping would be facing the residential side, so that's the side that needs to look better than the commercial side. So that's what we would, and that comes later. That's not being proposed here, but that would come when they come get their building permit.
Yep, that's just interested. Okay, thanks.
Additional discussion? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
As soon as she's ready.
Oh, ex parte communication. This is the point in time in the meeting in which we discuss the fact that every single council member that has had any communication, either in favor or against this matter has to disclose it, and subsequently also has to disclose that they are able to provide an impartial opinion in this matter. So I will say that I have read the documents that include the planning agenda meetings, and I am able to make that decision impartially. Councilwoman Hiller?
I have not had any ex parte communication.
I have not had any.
No ex parte communication to my recollection.
No communications on it.
None here either.
None here. No communication.
None.
Being that there's no communication and the council has deemed that they are able to make this decision impartially, we now proceed with the voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item C, an ordinance. If the clerk would read.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 3041 Northwest US 24 Highway from R1 Single Family Dwelling District to I1 Light Industrial District.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council, this particular zoning issue was approved by the Planning Commission. Director Finder will review the details with you.
Thank you. The details. So the zoning, as you can see on the zoning map here, this is kind of an anomaly located along Highway 24. You have single-family residential zoning, and we have plans, land use for highway commercial zoning and light industrial. So the proposed use would go to light industrial for a trailer, retail trailer sales and for storage, which is very fitting. There is a house, I believe, on the property right now that would be removed. Again, went through the public process, did not have any issues that came up, and this would be very consistent with the general plan and zoning for the area. So we recommend approval and stand for any questions.
Do we have questions for Mr. Fyander? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Clear. We have a second for approval by Councilmember Cohen. Any discussion? Seeing none, we do have the ex parte communication again. Just to repeat ourselves, this is a point in time in which we disclose any ex parte communication. At this point in time, we are to let the public know that we are able to make an impartial decision, even if we have received such communication. At this point in time, I have read the minutes of the Planning Commission meetings, and I feel that I am able to make an impartial decision. Councilwoman Hiller?
No ex parte that I recall.
Yes, I have, and I can be impartial.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
I received phone call and a letter, and I can be impartial.
Councilmember Emerson?
No communications.
Councilwoman Jensen?
None that I recall.
None.
Councilmember Mays?
No communication.
None.
After the disclosure, we think we're ready for the vote.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to the election of the deputy mayor. If the, oops, I stole your thunder. Item D, if the clerk would read.
D is election of deputy mayor to serve a 1-year term pursuant to Topeka Municipal Code Section A226B.
At this point in time, just for those of you who are watching from home, we last year worked on the governing body documents, and we stated that automatically the member in the governing body that had been standing here for the longest time had the automatic ability to be just considered for the position of deputy mayor. That does not preclude any individual interested in being nominated, which you can self-nominate as well, or nominate somebody else to become the deputy mayor. At this point in time, the highest ranking member at that point in time, if you want to call it that, I was at the State House today, so I'm using that language. that has not served as deputy mayor at this point in time is Councilwoman Clear, and she does have the right to either accept being nominated or say that she is not interested in being nominated tonight.
I would accept.
Okay, so we have Councilwoman Clear interested in the nomination. Any other individuals that would like to be nominated? Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Jensen.
So I would just like to give Ms. Clear my full endorsement as the outgoing deputy mayor. Thank you.
Wonderful. Additional comments or any other individual that is interested in being deputy mayor? You would like to make a comment? Yes.
Mayor, I was just going to nominate Councilwoman Clear for deputy mayor. I didn't know, thought you might need a motion. Maybe you don't.
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
not for the vote.
Okay, well.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will pass the ballots. Oh, I did ask 3 times. Yes. Hi. So at this point in time, nominations are closed. If we could have the ballots, Councilwoman Ortiz, I think that you are the person, oh no, we all have them here. And this is going to be a tight one. Got some color of the day to take home. Yes, exactly. She said that for what? Oh, she said oh. Yeah, right.
Just because she has it up.
Okay. Looks like we have Clear, 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 and Councilmember Clear.
Landslide.
In honor, yes. In honor of our outgoing deputy mayor, I will do a dad joke and say that the decision was clear. I would like to say in front of everybody, I know that I made a few remarks when you and your bride stood up in the meeting, but I want to say thank you. This first year to be the deputy mayor of what is the first time in history that you have a mayor that's a full-time mayor and full-time employee. And the city has had so many opportunities to be represented for so many events that it's been a very different way of having that deputy mayor role. You have run several meetings. You will run several meetings. You have been there. You have been arduous at work. You have taken the role of supporting in JADO and taken the lead and working with the broadband initiative. There's a lot of things that you have been doing, and I just want to say thank you for being so supportive in this first year and doing the excellent job that you have done, not only as deputy mayor, but as a community servant. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor.
Looking forward to it.
She'll be giving her calendar shortly. Yes. Now taking care of that item, we now move on to the item E, if the clerk would read.
E is election of 2 city council voting representatives to serve a 1-year term on the Joint Economic Development Organization Board.
So the next positions that are up are 2 council members. For those of you that are not familiar with what JADO is, the Joint Economic Development Organization is the function of the governing bodies that join the county and the city of Topeka as a whole, coming together to discuss matters of economic development. The city, the county-wide half cent sales tax, which is not the Fix Our Street tax, it's another tax, collects money from all over the county. And there's several projects that are being benefited by that. The zoo is one of them. We have some bikeway projects that are benefited from that. We have the Expo Center, but $5 million every single year get allocated for economic development. This is one of those things that gives Topeka a really big advantage with regards to providing economic development incentives, having land that's shovel-ready, and this whole group, both the council and the commission, all come together quarterly to discuss how those dollars are being utilized and talk about the vision and how they're going to be utilized in the future. This is a very important body. There's 4 members that are voting. Everybody's a member, but 4 members vote. The deputy mayor and the mayor are automatic members. However, 2 additional council members are able to serve in this capacity. And it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun work. So at this point in time, I will open nominations for anybody. Deputy Mayor.
So I would like to volunteer to continue serving so I can complete the work on the broadband initiative.
Okay, so we have Deputy Mayor Jensen.
Close.
Interested, Mayor Wolgass, I remember now. So we have Councilmember Jensen interested. Do we have any other nominations?
Mayor, I would like to nominate Councilman Lesser.
So we have a nomination for Councilmember Lesser. Councilwoman Heller.
I'd like to nominate Councilman Emerson. And also remind everybody that all of us do serve, and hopefully everybody will come to meetings and work on projects, no matter what emerges. One of our challenges, if I could follow up this year, is that we really made a shift that we are still needing to work on between just funding efforts to attract new businesses and grow businesses. That will continue. But we really, as JADO, we're looking at how do we attract and keep the workers. And it used to be that the matrix was just which benefits do you have, and you had to pass that matrix before a company would start to look at the other things. But we are advised that that has really changed, and we've certainly seen it with companies and with individuals. So,
thank you, Councilwoman Heller. Additional nominations? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Who was on it? Who was the voting member?
The voting members at this point in time were the Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Emerson, no, it was Councilmember Padilla and Councilmember Lesser. So Mike and Mike. Additional nominations? Going once? Yes, Councilmember Lesser?
I did receive an email from Mr. Padilla today, showing interest, asking me, so I take that as I'm going to nominate him as well.
Thank you.
He didn't ask for that, but he asked me to support him, so I assume he wanted to be nominated.
Okay. So, additional nominations? Going once. Additional nominations? Going twice. Additional nominations? Okay, so this closes the nomination period. We now proceed with voting. Make sure that in your ballots you select 2 individuals.
Who are the 2 now?
Well, you have the option of selecting from 4 individuals that are nominated. Councilmember Jensen, Councilmember Lesser, Emerson, and Padilla.
Okay, on the first one, we have Emerson and Lesser. Second one, we have Emerson and Jensen. Padilla and Lesser. Emerson and Jensen. Emerson and Lesser. Emerson and Lesser. Jensen and Lesser. And Jensen and Lesser. And Emerson and Jensen. Okay, so it looks like council members
Emerson.
Lesser and Emerson will be serving as the new board members. They both received 6, Jensen received 5, and PDA received 1.
Congratulations. We now proceed with the non-action items, if the clerk would read.
Is discussion and public hearing introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, authorizing and providing for the issuance of $10 million in aggregate principal amount of revenue bonds for the Sunflower Foundation Project Series 2019 at Topeka, Kansas. Providing for bond proceeds to be made available to the Sunflower Foundation Healthcare for Kansas for the purpose of financing the acquisition, construction, renovation, furnishing, and equipping of a nonprofit healthcare educational and resource facilities in the city, and authorizing certain bond financing documents with respect thereto.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council, tonight we have the opportunity to hear information regarding a very, very neat project that has the opportunity to make a difference within our community, something that would be unique and also provide an opportunity for nonprofit organizations within the community. I'm excited about this project. It's one that we almost had the chance a little over a year ago. We're excited to see it back. So with that, I asked Mr. White to come forward, and he'll provide some of the information related to the process that we're considering. And then, of course, there's a public hearing after that.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Jeff White with Columbia Capital. Happy New Year. Good to see you. I get to start with the boring stuff, and then I think Billy and Cheryl will follow up with the pretty pictures and get the more important part of the conversation. Just by way of background, nonprofit organizations generally, if they're operating within their mission and financing capital projects, have the right to borrow on a tax-exempt basis. But unlike the city, they don't have the ability to access the tax-exempt market directly. They have to actually use a governmental issuer like the city as a conduit in order to access the tax-exempt market. So Sunflower Foundation has approached the city to serve in that capacity. The city uses the industrial revenue bond process in order to facilitate that sort of a conduit issuance, and that's just a requirement of state law. It sounds very strange to talk about an industrial revenue bond for a nonprofit organization, but that's the statute we work within under state law. Under city policy, that process involves an application, some diligence by staff and advisors, and a review by an IRB committee. That review has happened, as has the diligence. The review committee met, and I'm pleased to report this item out unanimously to the council for favorable action. Importantly, both as a result of the structure of bond documents and the structure of state law, when the city serves in this capacity as a conduit issuer, it is not financially obligated on the repayment of the bonds, not a single penny. The obligation for repayment flows through to the nonprofit borrower. So we're simply serving as Sunflower's access to the tax-exempt market. So the Sunflower Foundation requests the issuance of $10 million in bonds to support the development, which they'll talk about in just a second. And those bonds will be purchased directly by Intrust Bank, so there's already a buyer for the bonds. So tonight we're asking you to hold a public hearing. That public hearing is required by federal law. These are what are known as private activity bonds, and anytime we issue private activity bonds, we're required to hold what's known as a TEFRA hearing. So that gives taxpayers the opportunity to come in and provide any comments that they want on the city's action to finance the bonds. So although I would like to filibuster, Madam Mayor, until Fiander shaves that beard, I'm happy to turn this over to the Sunflower Foundation to talk about the project, unless there are any questions.
Please don't filibuster.
Okay.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none, we proceed with the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Billy Hall with the Sunflower Foundation. I'm the president and CEO, and pleased to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our project. Sunflower Foundation has been in existence for about 18 years, and we made the decision early on to settle our corporate office in Topeka. Now, over the last 4 years, we've been, and we're statewide, we operate statewide. Our mission is to improve the health and well-being of all Kansans, very challenging mission. After the initial 18 years, we're ready to settle and to develop a corporate office, and we're doing that in Topeka. We have the good fortune to have 13 acres on the former Menninger property. We are renovating two of the three historic buildings that are there. It is the powerhouse, the smokestack building, and the 4-story building, which was once a nursing dormitory. That will be our corporate office. The powerhouse will become a nonprofit education center. A lot of our mission is around education and learning, and that will be an ideal place for people to come from all over the state of Kansas for opportunities to collaborate and learn together. We have been at this for quite a bit. Our construction costs are primarily going to be covered by this and some of the other things that were discussed, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the project.
Does the body have any questions for Ms. Billy? Councilwoman Ortiz.
How many employees will this employ?
Well, the number of employees that we currently have now is 8, and that'll probably go up to about 10. But we will have some shared office space there, so we will have some other nonprofits with us. And then most of the opportunity for bringing people to Topeka will be through the education center. So we'll be using a lot of contractors to help us in the kind of events and education that we offer to the nonprofits across the state. So we see a lot of folks. We actually have a lot of folks coming into Topeka now. We do a lot of convening. And this makes it easier for them and a central place and a chance for us to keep the business that we feel is so important in Topeka. It expands opportunities for meeting space. I'm not sure if that.
Yes, that does help because, I mean, you're saying this is a corporate office, so I'm concerned with what's going to be at the corporate office.
Yeah. So the Sunflower Foundation's office will be there, and we have room for 10 people. And then we have other space that we are looking at making available to local not-for-profits. So we haven't confirmed any right now, but we've been talking to a few. Our project's been delayed for a while, so we don't have any confirmation, but we have a number of nonprofits that will join us. And so the space will be occupied by us and other nonprofits, and then about half the space is devoted to the not quite half, maybe about 40% is devoted to the education center.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Clear, Deputy Mayor Clear.
Excuse my ignorance, but what are you going to be educating people on?
Well, one of the things that we do it on a number of issues. So we do a lot of learning collaboratives, helping nonprofits work together on issues they care about. Our mission is related to health. So we work with nonprofits that are providing community care or behavioral health or primary care. And we try to bring these folks together in communities so that they can learn to collaborate. One of the concerns we have is that we work in silos, and that the more we learn together and collaborate together, we'll be more effective and more cost-effective, and will provide better quality work. So a lot of our work is around health care, and so it's bringing people from communities and different types of provider systems. We also do a lot of work around food issues and food security issues, and we're doing a lot around food deserts and a lot of work in rural parts of our state. So we have a lot of presenters coming in talking about how we can find options for bringing back fresh produce and fresh foods to certain communities. Does that give you?
Yeah, who is that education geared towards? Is it nonprofits? Is it
We are nonprofit, so the nonprofit or public sector. So the other thing that we are trying to do by having this nonprofit center, we also do work about capacity building. That's probably one of the most important things. There's so many nonprofits, and there's a lot of challenge to keeping themselves thriving and able to meet their mission. So we do a lot of education on how to be more effective, how to look at maybe we're encouraging nonprofits where possible to come together, and instead of having 3 or 4 separate nonprofits, try to find a way to maybe narrow that down to 1 or 2. So we are doing that kind of education as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really excited about this project, and I need to speak on Billy's behalf a little bit. I've worked with them on for some time, actually, and just an absolutely top-notch organization, top to bottom, financially very viable. And the really cool thing about not only the renderings of the new complex and all those things is the fact that they could operate anywhere in the state. They don't have to be here in Topeka. And the fact that they chose to be here is really cool. And it also gives us the opportunity, which just makes sense because the capital and lobbying efforts and all the other different associations and nonprofits, it really makes sense with this facility now that they have, that we can actually bring more of those to Topeka, whether they permanently locate here because of collaboration, or just the simple fact they bring them in for education and they're buying meals, they're fueling up, they're doing all those type of things. So I was impressed before. I'm really impressed after your presentation when we met the other day, and so I'm really excited about this. This is a great deal for District 9, so thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and I want to echo those sentiments as well. I think that the work that all of you do in our communities and the support that you have given even our community, I think that you're being very modest and not sharing the impact that you have had on trails in our city
that's right.
and within the county, so that individuals have healthy ways of, exercising, and just, the support that you give our community is wonderful, and the renderings of the building is
In the
just
back of the room.
phenomenal. The area that includes the pond is going to have trails, so even if you're not going over to the building, it just keeps on expanding on the trail system that we have in our community right there in that beautiful area of Menningers. So, beautiful project, very excited about this. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll pick up on where you left off, because since you're here, most people think of the Sunflower Foundation regarding the grants that you make.
Yes.
And so if you could talk about them, perhaps in general, but also specifically some of the ones that have been made here in Shawnee County.
Well, we've done a lot in Shawnee County, that's for sure. I'll start with the built environment. We've done a lot around community-based trails, and so we've done some with Parks and Rec, most recently the Gage Park Perimeter Trail, which is something that had been in the process and in the works for many years, so we were able to be a private partner to that. We were very excited about that. We've done parks throughout the city. I don't have all of them there. We've done rail trails. We're working and helping build the Landon Trail, so someday you can get on the Shunga Trail, go to the Landon Trail, and end up in Humboldt. So from Topeka to Humboldt on a bicycle someday, which is so exciting for us. We've done some neighborhood parks and things like that. We do a lot in support of health, and so we've helped the new organization, Grace Med, which is our community health center, federally qualified health center. We've given a number of grants there. Off the top of my head, I probably wouldn't be doing justice to all the places there's a lot of associations here that are statewide that we work with, so they're all on our website. That might be the best way. Go look under Topeka and you'll see what we've done.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Well, Madam Mayor, I would like to see the picture back there, if we could pass it around. Is it too big to pass around?
No, we can show it to you. What we brought was kind of a rendering of the buildings as they are now, and there will be new construction on each building and a connector between them. So these buildings date back to the early 1900s, and would you like to see it?
Please, yes.
And there's also a rendering of the, I think,
Thank you,
the
ma'am.
front that we're developing. It's a very challenging hill. Lots of terrain issues. So our parking lot is going to be part of a walking experience because we're kind of having to build on that kind of a terrain. So since we are all about walkability and food access and healthy living and all of that, we're going to encourage people who come for educational programs to, we'll have in the parking lot signs about how many steps to get to the powerhouse or whatever. So we're kind of making we think it'll be fun.
So before we proceed into the portion of the evening that is the open, the public hearing, does the body have any other questions? Oh, yes, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Will Will there ever be a clinic up there?
No, we're not a
No.
healthcare organization.
Just,
No.
just
No, we're
nonprofit?
a philanthropy, so all the work we do is either in the form of grants, convening, education. Now, we do a lot to support healthcare, but we ourselves are not a healthcare provider.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
This is quite the handout.
Something like that.
Additional questions prior to the public hearing? Okay, seeing no further questions, at this point in time, we are opening the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this matter, this is your time to speak either pro or against it. You did not have to sign up for public comment. It is your opportunity to express your sentiment with regards to this process. Okay, second time, this is your opportunity to speak in favor or against this project. And third time, if there's anybody out there that would like to speak in favor or against this project, this is your time. Seeing nobody speaking up in the public hearing, this public hearing is closed. And this concludes this announcement item. The next item on our agenda is item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a discussion regarding the annexation ordinance and final plat for property located at 2400 Southwest Indian Hills Road, Sherwood Village subdivision, within unincorporated Shawnee County, Kansas, and adjacent to the City of Topeka corporate limits, Shawnee County, Kansas.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council members, given the interest in this topic, we placed this agenda item as a discussion item tonight rather than taking it straight to action. Typically, when items are brought back from the Planning Commission, they're typically put as an action item, which was the other, like the other two items. But tonight, we brought it forward as a discussion. At this time, I'll have Bill Finder, our Director of Planning and Development, to review the particulars of this agenda item.
Thank you. I apologize for Mr. White's commentary earlier. I will try not to be self-conscious now. As was said, we have a kind of a two-prong issue here dealing with Sherwood Village subdivision proposed. First, there's an annexation discussion as well as the plat discussion itself. The annexation is needed to serve the new subdivision city water, city sewer. And so the Planning Commission reviewed that request to make sure it was consistent with the Land Use and Growth Management Plan. I'm here to report back that they did. It is in our Tier 2, which is our area of our urban growth area that's ready to graduate into Tier 1 and be part of the city. It's part of basically an existing developed area, infill development that makes us more compact. The only they recommended approval of the annexation with two conditions. One, that do recognize that Indian Hills Road between 21st and 29th should be programmed for improvement to an urban standard. It is currently at a rural standard to have probably 3 lanes, curb, gutter, and sidewalks. And then secondly, to have a rezoning to bring the zoning of the property into city zoning parlance, which would be R1 single family, so you don't have a rural single family designation. So in your packet you had a cost benefit analysis for bringing this into the city, looking at the various services that would be needed. And so I'll just leave it at that. We would recommend approval at the appropriate time when this comes back to you. If there are any questions, I'll pause before I move on to the plat.
Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the issue that they're all discussing is the physical size of each property is much, much smaller than the surrounding properties. And I think that the concern, I think, is probably what ended up making this a discussion item instead of an action item. So there's a lot of people signed up to comment. Do you mind if we just move right on to that?
Well, typically what I do is before we get into discussion, we do bring in the individuals to sign up for public comment. So if the other members of the body would be amenable to that, before we get into discussion, Mr. Fyander, before we proceed with that, was there any other part of the presentation that you needed to complete?
So that was the annexation part of the presentation. There's a plat part that would go after any comments on the annexation or questions.
Okay, so we'll do a few questions and then jump, yes, let's start with the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it'd be important that he'd cover the plat information before we take public comment, please.
Okay. Deputy, Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. So, my concern with annexation is we can't afford our existing infrastructure, and now we're going to add more. How are we going to afford to do this?
Councilmember Jensen, that's why we do a cost-benefit analysis, to make sure that you can see what the life cycle costs are for that, for the roads, for the stormwater, for the water, the sewer, fire, police, and that they have, that the revenue that would come from the annexation would cover those costs over the long term. So that is showing a positive.
Well, that's all provided these lots all sell within a reasonable amount of time. That infrastructure is going to wear out probably before the majority of these lots are sold. So unless they're all already pre-sold, my fear is that we'll get into a situation where we've put in all of the infrastructure, but there aren't enough lots sold within there for the property taxes to cover the expense of replacing that infrastructure. That's what's happened in other parts of town.
So again, Councilmember Jensen, the city does not put in the infrastructure.
But we replace it.
The city does not put in the infrastructure initially. The developer pays for that through benefit district. Actually, the homeowners end up paying for that. And so the ongoing maintenance of those lots, and really we're talking, just to give you an example, with 30-some lots, that's probably a 3-year absorption rate. So we are way far in advance of looking at something where it comes back to the city that we have to maintain something that we're not getting revenue for. So the roads last, the sewer, the water, all of that lasts, has certain 20, 30, 100-year replacement cycles. So
It's supposed to. Again, what things are supposed to last and what we found they actually do are very different. And it's not that I don't support that. My fear is that, again, we have to look at what it costs to maintain the things that we're being quote-unquote given for free, and I just worry about that. So if you guys have run the numbers and you're comfortable with them, then that's good enough for me, but, in other cases, we've run the numbers and it's not panned out. So just a word of caution is all. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you. Forgive me if I missed this, but in terms of improving Indian Hills, is that expected to be a split between the city and the county? Is it already on one of our programs, a cost benefit or a benefit district? What is there discussion yet?
There is no firm plans as to whether some of that, how much of that would be all city or some of that county. Between 21st and 29th, there is some portions that are not city on both sides and probably won't be. So, yeah, that needs to be discussed, but at the very least, it was not in your current 10-year CIP, so that's the recommendation, is that the next one you look at, the next CIP you look at, it should be in the 10-year outlook.
Thank you. I hadn't seen it, and to me, it wasn't an automatic that it needed to be the city doing it at all, much less the city doing it at 100%. So on behalf of all parties concerned, I hope we open that up. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, if you could please continue with the second part of your presentation.
Okay. So you don't normally see these. These are what we call major plats. Most of all of our subdivisions are minor plats. Majors are anything that has more than 5 lots or dedicates a new road. In this case, both of those conditions are satisfied in this case, and that's why you're seeing that. In terms, and I believe you received a memo from Mary Feeney today regarding some of the authorization or what your role is. And just to be clear, the Planning Commission has already approved the plat. So that is not necessarily what is before you or will be before you when you consider a major plat. You're agreeing to accept the dedications, the right-of-way, the easements for maintenance, obviously. So that's the role. Planning Commission and staff both, we found that two things, and that's, well, actually one big thing, is that this plat would meet subdivision regulations for the city. Part of that subdivision regulation includes consistency with our land use and growth management plan. The subdivision regulations themselves are sort of technical standards, minimum design standards, and that are largely satisfied by engineering. So I'm going to touch on a couple of the issues that came up in terms of consistency with our comprehensive plan. I think that may shed some light and address some of the comments that you have seen and have received. As mentioned, so we have 33 lot subdivision, an extension of Southwest 24th Terrace that will ultimately connect to an extension of Southwest Wexford from the Sherwood Park subdivision. It's on 9 acres, and the developer is the same developer who developed Sherwood Park and Miller's Glen and Miller's Reserve to the north. The three issues that really stood out that I wanted to cover real briefly is one, connectivity to the existing neighborhood and sort of the traffic. Also cover the lot layout and design, and then stormwater. So those would be the three things. Connectivity. So our land use and growth management plan calls for connectivity. We should connect neighborhoods and have connected neighborhoods, and this does that. And that leads to a couple outcomes. As reasons we do that, it supports more compact and dense development and patterns. If you just imagine every street was a dead-end street, you cannot get a lot of lots on a dead-end street. When you begin connecting them and creating two ways in and out and circulation, you can have density, you can have you can have more lots. And when you have more lots, you can have more revenue and per acre. And when you have more revenue per acre, you can take care of that infrastructure that we are authorized to take care of and provide those services. It also provides transportation choices, makes a more walkable neighborhood. It diffuses traffic. It doesn't concentrate it on one street. So when you connect, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. When these pieces start coming together, you begin to diffuse that traffic so it's not all on one local street. You have more than one way in and out. And that's how that's how many of almost all of our neighborhoods that are in the city grow and develop over time. Last but not least, it provides for emergency access when you connect streets and neighborhoods. Every minute, every second depends on emergency response times. So, not to mention snow plows and school buses and trash trucks that all have to use that same routing pattern. So it's a very it's something that's your policy. It is your policy to do this. So we believe that the connection to Sherwood Park or Wexford in this case, and also to ultimately Berkshire, which is another road in Sherwood Park that would be planned to be connected up, all have been planned for. These were all platted and approved by the city in the early 2000s to ultimately connect. And that is exactly what this plat does. So let me jump to, there's some other, traffic. That was one thing that has come up. The traffic there would be traffic created by development of 33 new lots. In terms of the impact on an arterial, it is really negligible. You're looking at less than 1% of the total trips that are on that arterial would come from a fully built out Sherwood Village plat. Also, the trips within the neighborhood, again, we want local streets to not have through traffic or excess traffic. So again, connecting them to arterials and having two ways in and out, again, diffuses a lot of that local traffic that can find different routes throughout the neighborhood that is traveling points within the neighborhood as opposed to another neighborhood. So the second big issue that we were dealing with was the lot layout and the design, or the density. And the block itself that is proposed here is, as you can kind of, if we probably jump to that, that's the actual layout of the lots. You can see it's an east-west orientation. The streets that it will be connecting to are these, actually, Indian Hills and Wexford would both be north-south streets. So this really stands, this is a block in of itself. It is not really an extension of an existing block. It is a connection to an existing block, but it really is a bit of a standalone because of its orientation. And so we look at our land use and growth management plan, and they guide us to say whether or not this has compatibility with the lot layout, with development policies. And so we look at densities, and as we encourage more, a little higher density, again, to have that sort of cost-effective development for the taxpayers, we also want to make sure it's not too much of a departure for what's around it. So the plan recommends 3 to 4 units per acre. And this particular plat is at 3.6, so it's right in the middle of that. The street it is connecting to, Wexford Drive, is at 2.9. The street Berkshire, which it would ultimately connect to, is a 3.0. The lots across Indian Hills and West Indian Hills is at 3.9. What we're seeing, the property to the north, which it does not connect to, is a much lower density. Miller's Reserve, I believe, is under 2 units per acre, which is a bit isolated. Miller's Glen, a little further north, is at 3.9. So what that tells us, what staff, how we try to weigh those, is that within the 3 to 4 range? A, it is. B, is it more than a unit of a departure from any surrounding subdivisions? And so we didn't find that. So it's half of a unit difference, with the exception of Miller's Reserve to the north, which is not connecting here. So the key is, where is it connecting, and is that a compatible range? And we found that it is less, about a half a unit difference. So that is, in terms of density, the next thing was the lot size that was mentioned. Again, these lots, that's a good point. This is not approving units. This is not approving a home. This is not approving a product on the lot. These are approving the lots. So these lots are minimum 64 feet wide. The block is connecting to is about 80 feet wide. The depth is the same, 130 feet for all the lots that are in this plat and in Sherwood Park that it's connecting to. So however, that is not a grave departure from a design standpoint, particularly when you consider the footprints that are actually already out there. The footprints that are on Wexford for 2-car garages would actually fit on the new lots that are being proposed with Sherwood Village. So yes, the new product that comes on these lots will probably not have a 3-car garage. It would probably be 2-car garage. But the footprint of the homes that are already out there that this would connect to would fit. And so they would fit the setbacks, and that's something that we have to look at for compatibility, for consistency with the plan. And then the last thing I'll just finish on is the stormwater. Stormwater was brought up. Go back to the aerial. So just north of Santa Fe Court in the back there, between Santa Fe Court and Wexford, there is a stormwater detention area. That is going to be removed, relocated, and piped, and now the stormwater will be rerouted to a detention area between Miller's Glen and Miller's Reserve to serve that area. So it's moving further, so we're taking the stormwater further away from Sherwood Park, which was, again, that was part of the ultimate design for this area. And that stormwater report was approved by the city utilities and engineering staff. So with that, I think that's all I wanted to run by you. If there are any questions about that, then moving forward, I can stand otherwise.
So if it would be amenable to the body, again, we have, I think it's close to 10 individuals signed up for public comment. I would like to give the public an opportunity to speak their concerns prior to us having discussion.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, Councilmember Hiller.
Thank you. On that stormwater moving relocation, that was a staff decision rather than a public one? And it was done how long ago?
It will be done when the plat is improved. When the streets are put in for Sherwood Village, it would need to be removed because it's in the location where a couple of the lots are going to be for new homes, so it has to be moved at that time.
No, I understand that. I was just, it sounded like that decision was made some time ago. Like maybe back in 2014 when we had this,
When this area, when the 9 acres here would be developed, yes, obviously that couldn't stay, and so there was a building of the detention area north of Miller's Reserve to make sure it was big enough to accommodate the future plat. So that was decided, I guess if you will, a few years ago when we did Miller's Reserve, and so they had to prove to us that it's big enough because they had to go out and survey it again and show that it could retain that water, and it can. So.
Thank you.
Okay. City Attorney, I did have a question from Councilmember Emerson. Just wanted to make sure that I ran it by, just for the way that we manage the public comment in this situation. I know that in the past we've had issues that pertain with planning, and therefore there is no back and forth discussion. It's simply a listening opportunity for the body to listen to the concerns of the individuals. And in certain instances in planning, there is no opportunity for the public to speak because we are in a hearing. We are not in a hearing right now, but I just want to have clarification for the rest of the body.
Right, you are not acting in a quasi-judicial capacity with regard to this.
Okay. That being said, there seems to be a lot of new people out there that are eager to speak to the body. So I will read just a small piece of our decorum, rules of decorum when addressing the body, just for everybody's edification. Each person shall speak up. When you come up to the podium, you do have 4 minutes to speak. You are able to address the whole body as a whole. You're not able to address one individual specifically. A lot of times you will provide your input and the body may not respond to you immediately. It does not mean that your questions are not being heard. This is your opportunity to express your sentiment with regards to this matter. If there is a need for further discussion, the staff is here. This is the last item on the agenda, which fortunately allows you the opportunity to stay behind and kind of catch up with staff if you need to do so at that moment in time. The discussions will be done just respectfully, no repetitious language. Make sure that you just are able to just share your expressions. So that being said, we will start with Kristen, and I am sorry if I say the last name wrong. Hoge? Hoge, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Kristen Pogue. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present my concerns. My husband is also in attendance, supporting me in the back. So, so I have 3 main concerns in regards to this development for the Sherwood Village subdivision. I have particular interest in this because I am the owner of that culvert that manages the present neighborhood. It's in the back of my home on the corner. We live on the corner of that Santa Fe Court. So my biggest concern is flooding. And I will tell you that the existing storm runoff does currently drains into a culvert into my neighborhood. So most of the neighborhood, that water runs down in between into that middle area, down to the back of our property and into that culvert, and then directly into those detention ponds in the back. And what's in place presently is adequate for the current neighborhood. That 7-inch rain we got this fall, it was able to withstand that. Those ponds filled up about 2/3 of the way full. I went out and checked because I was a little nervous, but it flowed out and then was able to manage that water. I will tell you, 33 homes, very little green space, a lot of concrete. The plan is to use the existing culvert and just tap in a pipe and pipe it on down the road. It's gonna flood. And when I expressed my concern to the engineer at the first public hearing, I was told, number one, culverts were designed to flood, and number two, I should have thought about that before I purchased the home. So as you can imagine, I left that first meeting disappointed and disturbed. So, and the actual first proposal for the storm management was actually rejected. Now I know that there was something else that was proposed with moving these detention ponds further on down, but that does not alleviate my concern that we're overbuilding an attractive land. We're allowing that storm runoff to use the existing storm drainage system, and we're just piping out down the road. I mean, that's still, physics says a small pipe, more storm runoff, that's going to back up. And so I think I can speak for all of us that are along that abutting neighborhood that will be in that area, that flooding is a major concern. Anybody that's along that has a border of that detention pond, flooding is a concern for me. So, and that attitude, of course, doesn't help me be super confident in whatever is proposed. Number two is a strain on existing resources. So that Indian Hills Road between 21st and 29th, yes, it looks like a county road, but it acts as a city road, and it is congested.
You still have a minute.
Okay. Congested and busy. There is an elementary school bus that stops on Indian Hills Road and allows children to get off into the street to that Miller's Reserve. There's no sidewalk that they get led into. They get led into the street on that Miller's Reserve. So now we're going to add 60 plus cars, traffic's worth onto that Indian Hills Road. If future development comes along, we decide to expand that, now we're funneling all of those 60 plus cars into our neighborhood. So that's concerning to me, that infrastructure wouldn't support a 33 lot build. And that's, like I said, finally, that's my third is the aesthetics of it. 33 lots means that I can sit on my back deck, and there's such little green space that I could sit on my deck and see people's bathrooms of 3 different homes. So that's a pretty stark departure. I don't think you can really appreciate that unless you see it. So, okay, thank you so much for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The next person signed up to speak is Nicholas Isaacson.
I think you're probably going to hear quite a few of the same concerns. She happened to be next door neighbors to her. I also live at the end of Santa Fe Court, and drainage is a major concern of mine, and that's going to be expressed, I think, by all the people that live at the end of the cul-de-sacs in the area. When there is significant rain and rain runoff to get to those ponds and to drain that system off, there is a steady stream of water for a significant amount of time afterwards. And to think of running that through a pipe instead of the existing ponds that are there, I fear that there is going to be some major flooding, in particular, I mean, to the properties that are there, but definitely to what's going to be developed. And in particular, my biggest concern is during the construction, the easement would run through those ponds. Unless there's planned ahead of time some way to handle the water during development, that needs to be taken care of before construction starts, to prevent my home in particular from flooding. And again, like the other people are going to say, the smaller plot size is going to be significant. From the numbers I found, it's about 40% smaller than Sherwood Park and then what the houses that are currently there. And like Kristen said, that would be 3 to 4 homes, and the amount of space that's in my backyard that's going to be right there. And I'm obviously concerned with that and what would come along with that as well. And the increased traffic I know has been discussed, both through the existing roads that are there, but in particular to Indian Hills. I'm just not, to add what's already being developed in the Miller's Reserve, and then an additional 33 homes on top of that. I feel that there should be a plan in place instead of thinking about it in the future to expand that road and be able to handle all of Miller's Reserve plus Sherwood Park that's already there and whatever is developed, the 33 plus homes for this new development. Those are my, I think you're going to hear a lot of the same thing, but those are my main concern. The storm drainage being number one, obviously, because the system works great now. It's a significant amount of water that does drain off during storms, but I want to, obviously I want that to continue to happen, in particular during construction, whenever that happens, to be thought of ahead of time. Really, that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next person signed up to speak is Jared Ansley.
Mayor, council members, thank you very much for this time. My name is Jerry Ansley. I live in the Sherwood Park subdivision. You know, I think we all have several concerns with this, but I just want to tell you a little bit about our community. Sherwood Park, we have some great things we do. We have 4th of July where we all have a big parade around the neighborhood, and we're all kind of here supporting each other. So I just want to kind of lead with that. My main concern with this is really the size of the lots that are being developed. 3.6 living units per acre was what was presented. You compare that to just north of that, which was 1.5. And then Sherwood Park overall, the city planner mentioned the numbers in 2.9 or 3, but if you actually look at the notes from the Planning Commission, it says 2 to 2.5. And that was very comparable to what I saw when I went on County Appraisers and looked at this myself. Sears having lots that are much smaller houses. One of the interesting things, and the city planner kind of had a Freudian slip when he first talked about this, he called it Sherwood Park. They're trying to call it Sherwood Village to make it seem something different, but it's part of Sherwood Park. And the way I can kind of maybe sum that up is to say, if I added on to my house, I still have to call that part of the house the Ansley part of the house, right? I can't call it Councilman Cohen house. That'd be nice if you'd pay my taxes for it, but I can't do that. It's part of my house. This development is part of Sherwood Park. It connects to Sherwood Park, and so the lots that are developed there should be like the rest of Sherwood Park. Sherwood Park was just expanded to the west not too long ago. The houses and the homes that are on that area are like the rest of the neighborhood. And so if this moves forward, which I think there are many things that need to be addressed before it's moved forward, Indian Hills Road, the wastewater issues, all of these, those lots should be the same size as the rest of Sherwood Park that we have there. That's, you know, I know everybody else is going to have similar concerns, but that was kind of my main concern on this. And just to kind of remind the council here that you guys serve the citizens, you serve the people. I love being a part of Topeka. I've lived here ever since I came to college here. And you guys serve us. You don't serve a developer or the city planner, actually. You serve us as the citizens. So I hope you hear our comments, and I hope you take that to light with your decision as you move forward on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Adam Profit.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. We really appreciate the time and the open ear. I'm going to have very similar concerns to what you've heard already and what I assume you're going to continue to hear throughout the evening as we continue to pile up here and let you hear our concerns. I've handed out a deck to everybody. It starts with Sherwood Park resident concerns, so that should be at your ready. It's got 6 pages. The first 3 pages lay out our concerns as well as a few recommendations and some solutions to some of the issues that we're talking about this evening. So pages 1 through 3 are issues and solutions. Pages 4 through 6 are really more appendix material that you can kind of peruse at your leisure. I also emailed this on Sunday morning, so you guys should all have access to this. So I guess I would lead with the first 2 sentences on the paragraph on the cover page. It says, "We are not opposed to the growth and development of our city, but rather we support it. However, growth and development should be done in a beneficial manner for all." And let me pause there and say that I'm not pretending to speak for every member of Sherwood Park. I'm not trying to say that. But I will say that 2 weeks ago, I put a Facebook post out there on our neighborhood Facebook page. And within 48 hours, I had 25 emails saying, "Hey, how can we help support this? We don't like what's happening. Tell us what we can do to get involved." That represents about 10% of our neighborhood. So that alone should be coupled as a data point with the city planner's direction that it might have checked some of the boxes on the minimum requirements from a city planning, but here's a data set that says at least 10% of this neighborhood is firmly opposed to this development. So if we move over to page 2, we'll get into some of the concerns that we have. At the Planning Commission meeting on December 18th, the Planning Department has already granted 2 exceptions, the second main bullet point there. They granted 2 exceptions to the city code and design standards to make this project fit. The first of which is the block length of the development exceeds city standards. The second of which is the dead-end length also exceeds city standards, and it's awaiting potential future development. That development would come to the west on a piece of property that is owned by somebody else. So that's kind of a leap of faith to assume that it's going to be developed in the near future. So what that means is the Planning Commission, when they voted yes, 2 times had to say, "Yeah, but." They said, "It doesn't conform, yeah, but we're granted an exception to the block length, and yeah, but we're going to give a longer dead end than we normally would." So 2 times it said, "Yeah, but" to city code and standards. Again, as mentioned, Indian Hills is not currently in the 10-year CIP. It was mentioned that it should be as a part of this neighborhood development. We would advocate that Indian Hills is improved prior to the development going in. You've heard concerns about school children getting off the bus with no sidewalks. As you exit our neighborhood, it is physically impossible to reach another part of the city without driving through county, and you can't walk because you're not on sidewalks. It's physically impossible the way it's laid out right now. Again, the lot size. This proposal calls for 33 homes in a 9-acre tract that gives you 3.6 dwelling units per acre. As mentioned, Sherwood Park as a whole is somewhere in the 2 to 2.5 DUAs. That's 44% more dense than what you have in Sherwood Park, and more than 100% more dense than what you have to the north in Miller's Reserve. And I don't know this to be fact, but it's been mentioned multiple times that a lot of these homes are going to be developed without a basement. So that can further reduce what could also already be a smaller home, could reduce the value if you have less square footage if you're on a slab as opposed to a fully developed basement. One other thing that's kind of interesting on the very bottom bullet point there, this proposal runs counter to the Planning Department recommendation from April 8th, 2014 as they developed Miller's Reserve. The staff at this time cited safety concerns with having too many homes. This tract was a 16-acre tract, and they could only put 22 homes in there because of the number of trips that would be happening in there. The staff cites this reduction in density is preferred since it reduces the number of lots with access to the streets for traffic and public safety reasons. A maximum of 200 trips per day on a dead-end street is the recommended design standard. The 22 proposed lots would allow this maximum capacity. So 22 lots was a maximum capacity in a 16-acre tract, but somehow this developer is putting 33 lots in a 9-acre tract on a dead-end road. So on page 3, big bold at the very top, our recommendation is to send this project back to the Planning Commission for further consideration and to develop alternative design to be more in line with the design and consistency of the surrounding neighborhoods. We have several more options there, but really chief amongst them, take it from 33 lots down to 23 lots. That puts it in line with the staff recommendation for Miller's Reserve and puts it in line with the density of Sherwood Park.
Your time has expired, sir.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to extend 2 minutes. Give this gentleman
Would you like to have 2 more minutes, sir?
Okay, I've never had somebody give me more time to talk. Thank you.
I'd like for him to be able to finish this document.
We have a motion to extend for 2 minutes. Councilman Jensen makes a second to that motion. At this point in time, we proceed with the voting.
Just a point of information, Mayor. We just changed the rules, and what's...
Seven.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll need your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Jensen? We have 8 yes.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. Sir, you have 2
Thank you so
additional
much. I
minutes.
appreciate that. Thank you all. I appreciate it. So again, we'd like for you to make a motion to send this back to the Planning Commission to further consider the design to make sure it's consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. We're not opposed to the development. We just want it to be in line with what is happening there from a density, design, and affordability perspective as well. Again, the best way to get there, in my estimation, is to reduce the number of lots for sale from 33 to 23. If you do that, you take your the dwelling units per acre more in line with what is there on the north side of Sherwood Park, and it makes it in line with the staff analysis from 2014 saying 200 trips per day on a dead-end street would be the maximum allowable there. Something else that you could consider is that there's really no need to connect to Wexford and or Berkshire if that happens in the future. If you flip to page 5, we have a plot map there. Miller's Reserve is squarely in the middle, Sherwood Park to the south, and Miller's Glen to the north. The green lines that we've drawn in are some proposed road design standards. Now, I'm not suggesting that Miller's Reserve should connect up to Miller's Glen. However, you could extend 24th west all the way to the end of the development, shoot it north, and wrap it back around into Miller's Reserve. Again, this is the same developer that did Miller's Reserve. The south end of Miller's Reserve was left as a cul-de-sac instead of a dead end, when knowing that within a couple of years he'd be building a new development right there. I'm not sure why it wasn't opened up to connectivity. That would solve a lot of the connectivity and traffic diffusion projects, or problems that were discussed earlier. So there are other design options available for the council and the commission to consider, is my point. So with that concludes everything, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Mr. James Ungerer.
Mayor, council members, thank you for allowing me this time to speak. My name is James Unger. I live at 2504 Southwest Wexford Drive, which is directly adjacent to this proposed plat. So when one is buying a home, you know, that you're making certain investments. You're making a financial investment. You're hoping that that home has a certain value that's going to hold or even grow with the demand of you know, folks wanting to live in that neighborhood. And so that's the second investment you're making, is you're making an investment in the neighborhood. You know, you're expecting to that neighborhood to stay as it is, you know, a family-oriented neighborhood with the same principles, which this proposed plat to the north doesn't so much. And then you're investing in safety for your family. And so this represents something different from what is already there. So, you know, you talk about growth and development. We all understand that growth and development is good for the city as a whole. Making it more compact is good. But that growth and development should be in a beneficial manner for all, or certainly not a detriment to any of its citizens or taxpayers. And so I guess Councilman Cohen, I had him hand out to you folks a handout, and what I wanted to call attention to is some of the discrepancies that the planning department made when they approved Miller's Reserve back in 2014, and I've even highlighted that. So it starts off with, of course, the council action for the zoning and then the plat of Miller's Reserve. And so if you turn to page 2, you'll find that they recommend conformance to the plan since this Miller's Reserve would stay in urban, suburban, low-density residential. The current proposal does not alter this aspect of development, and therefore the request is in conformance to the comprehensive plan. So again, back then the plan recommended 3 dwelling units per acre. They went to 1.5, well below what the plan recommended. But they said because it was staying suburban or urban low-density residential, it's not out of line with the plan as a whole. It also talks about in the zoning there the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby properties, and they cite that there is not a detrimental effect upon nearby properties since the land use is not significantly changing from what is allowed, and density is reduced from what could potentially be developed under that PUD. So again, they're citing that reduced density between the two neighborhoods will not detrimentally affect those in Miller's Glen.
this density is proposed greater than Sherwood Park and Miller's Reserve. So they're going against the recommendation of Miller's Reserve 4 years ago. They also cite that the current proposal will allow for streets to be publicly maintained. I do understand that the streets are financed by the developer at first, but then the city does actually, put tax dollars. I've read they petition for bonds to actually get that money from the city. Then if you turn again, the 16 acres, 1.5 dwelling units per acre, actually 2/3 of these lots would be in a density more in line with 4.25. And I calculated that to the center of the street. If you actually look at 2/3 of those lot sizes, 4.25, which is greater than the recommended departure of 1 dwelling units per acre that the planning department cited as what they look at. The other thing it talks about is the conformance to the plan, and staff analysis cites that, they carefully analyzed this plat and worked closely with both the developer and existing residents of Miller's Glen. We in Sherwood Park are just asking for that same consideration, that they're able to work with us and the developer together to come up with something that is more in line and that will work for everybody. I do have more to say, hopefully.
How much time do you need? How much time do you need?
How much you'll give me?
Would you have as much again, or?
Say two, can you wrap it up in 2 minutes?
I can do my best.
Okay. I'd say, can I move to extend them 2 minutes?
We have a motion for extension for 2 minutes by Councilman Cohen. Councilman Jensen seconds this. We need 7 votes. We proceed with voting.
We have 7 yes.
7 having voting yes, the motion passes. You may proceed, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. So the last couple of pages there in my handout is actually from the Land Use and Growth Development Plan 2040, which is the current plan. And under the section 5, land use, I've highlighted, it talks about new neighborhoods should have high level of connectivity throughout. Complete streets should connect within neighborhoods and should also connect to adjoining neighborhoods. Streets should also be structured in short block lengths. So if we're going to talk about connectivity to Wexford Drive, Phase 2 of Miller's Reserve, which adjoins this suggested plat, is not been approved for plat yet. So why do we not, again, connect to the north as Mr. Prophet talked about in an effort to alleviate traffic concerns, multiple entrance exit points and such? It just feels to me like we're picking and choosing how we're doing that. The next part of it is actually under Section 5 again, B, III, which is future land use categories, urban, suburban, low density. There's actually, it says right there, new single developments should demonstrate compatibility with character of existing residential developments in regard to building designs. So again, building designs being homes in this instance. Lot layouts, which lot layouts would suggest to me a similar sizes. Streets and setbacks. Infill developments is encouraged, and an infill plan actually in the growth and development plan cites that it should fit into the overall character and pattern of the area. This is again all from your conformance plan that we as citizens have. The Planning Commission voted 5-2 to approve it. 3 of those that voted yes to approve it also expressed concerns about the density. So there's clearly issues here. You have a vested interest in this community the same as we do as taxpayers. And so I'm just asking for those same considerations.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Gary Smith.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you folks and to express our concerns. I would like to start that I have had experience in government service. I know your job is not easy, and I have a whole career there, so I share your pain, but I know you'll do the right thing. There are a number of people here tonight that won't be speaking, and I'm sure they come here because they want to express the same amount of concern that the rest of us have. So I'm going to limit mine to basically one particular area. And that area is going to stress more on the value, the impact of value on other properties in the neighborhood. It is one of the concerns I have whenever I move to a community, I've lived several places, is when you look at a community, is what is there around it that is uncertain. And when I moved to Sherwood Park, there were a lot of vacant lots, and my concern was what's going to be built on other lots. So first of all, I was concerned about what was up and down my neighborhood. Second of all, you start looking around and saying, what is zoned beyond that? What's going to happen beyond that? And that does have impact. If you look at any studies, I've been involved in real estate lending, I've been involved in infrastructure lending, I've been involved in business lending, so I understand how other things kind of impact it. And one of the first things you hear and one of the first things that you learn is what's the most important in real estate is location, location, location. Now, location is impacted by virtue of what is right next to you as well as in the surrounding area and how it impacts your property. If you have a certain size home and there are other homes that are much smaller and much denser, that is inconsistent with some of the people that have spoke here previous to me, have addressed, that does impact property. You buy into that neighborhood because it represents certain things. And when you see the culture or the nature of that changing, it does have an impact on how you look at your value of your property and how others look at the value of your property. When your property goes down, the taxes go down, the assessed valuation goes down, less money to the city. Now, you can raise the mill levy, but that's not what you want to do. I think you want to see property values increase so that assessed valuation increases and mill levy stays the same and generates more taxes. Smaller homes do dictate, I think, less value. I think density is a negative. When you look at all kinds of studies, I looked on the internet of things that impact property. They talk about location, they talk about market, it talks about condition, it talks about changes in nearby properties, and it talks about smart community planning. These things all impact, and we know that. I think you all have been there, you've all owned homes, you all own farms, or whatever you may have owned, and there are things that can increase that value and other things that decrease that value. One of those concerns is what does it do to my particular property? Not saying that this type of a housing development isn't necessary, but I don't know that it's necessary or appropriate in this location. There probably is another location. And I'd say even the property that is adjacent to it to the west is probably not the right location. You look to the north, you look to the south at Sherwood Park, and it is not consistent with what's been there. And I think some of the previous speakers have addressed it far better than I will in terms of what it represents and how it, I think, will impact all of us. There's a practice that I think that municipalities take on and how you deal with adjoining properties and how you deal with developments and how you deal with these areas that are undefined. And I think the way you handle this in terms of setting a practice that you're going to protect the homeowners that are there, the property owners there, I think will do a lot in helping others as they move into communities and to neighborhoods to feel comfortable. I don't have to worry so much about what's going around me. They're going to take care of me and make sure that we continue with the same type of development. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I think others have probably spoken better in more detail than I have, but I think conceptual-wise, my main concern is value. They say that a person's home is the single largest investment that most of the time that they ever make, and I think that's very, very true. And the last thing you want to do is have that property go down or find it less saleable. I hope you've never been there. I hope I never get there, but I'd like to think, right now property seems to be very saleable in Sherwood Park. I really believe that this type of development will not enhance that. It will be doing us no favors in Sherwood Park putting this type of development that close by. Some of the dialogue here tonight, I think you've heard about drainage here and these things there. Those are all concerns, but I think the bigger, more global thing is the impact on our major investment of our home and on our children and on our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm going to ask him a couple questions.
Please.
Thank you, ma'am. I get the congestion, the road traffic, I get the drainage, the flooding. You're the first one that's kind of spoke about the property values and the density. And I'm just a little curious. Tell me what your concern is. Is your concern due to the fact that the lots are smaller, that property values are going to be lower? I need to understand that a little bit better, what your concern is there.
I think when you see a neighborhood that the houses are very close together, the very narrow setbacks are very clustered together. We're Kansas. We're not New York City, or we're not. I live in Denver. We're not Denver. I think we want a little more space. And when you see smaller homes in with bigger homes, I don't think they always used to say buy the smallest house on the street. It'll raise your value, but it doesn't do anything for the highest value house on that street. So I think smaller homes tend to pull down the value of the bigger homes. Density, it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look planned as well. It just looks like you're building houses to build houses, to make a buck, and to move that property on down the road. We're homeowners, we're not developers. Now,
I get that. My question, would you not agree, though, that covenants are as important, if not more important, than the size of the lot? You know, the covenant says the house needs to be 2,500 square feet, and it needs to have 25% stone or brick or what have you, because we talk about this lot size, and for instance, there's other areas in town that have some smaller lot size that have higher value homes than are in Sherwood Park. So what I'm trying to understand is the concern, the value of the homes tied to the covenant? Are you concerned about the covenant, or are you, because I think it's a misnomer to say just because the lot size is, now, if the lot size, we're talking about density in regards to traffic, I think that's a legitimate concern that we can talk about. But if we're talking about property values, I don't know that that necessarily articulates to lot size and value of the home in this situation.
I think covenants are important, but I do think lot size, lot layout are covenants enforced. I know their waivers can be granted. I think if you live by all those covenants, you can probably mitigate some of that. But I would still think that when people look at homes in general in a neighborhood, and there's homes that deviate from that, that's going to relate to dollars and cents to them, just their perception on buying.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next person signed up to speak is Michelle Fox.
Oh, hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Michelle Fox, and I live on Oxford Drive. It's been fantastic so far to raise our kids on a dead-end road with open space to explore. Right now, I don't know, the pictures that you've seen doesn't do it justice, but right now it's an open area with trees, and it's a free-for-all. Kids go down there and explore and play. And I understand that progress happens, and it's wonderful that Topeka is growing and houses are being built. But I guess I didn't realize as a homeowner what that would exactly look like going forward. As parents, my husband and I always try to parent as in begin, as you mean to continue. I guess my part, or my feeling on this whole development is Mr. Rowland has developed all of it, from Sherwood Park to Miller's Glen to Miller's Reserve. And it feels to me as if this development is kind of shoehorned in between two areas that are totally different. Like the other speakers have talked about, you know, the density in Sherwood Park as a whole is like 2 to 2.5 homes per acre, and Miller's Reserve is much less at 1.5, and this would be much more dense. And maybe that would be okay if that's how it was planned in the beginning, but when my husband and I originally went to the meeting for Miller's Reserve 5 years ago, I talked to the developer about that. I was like, how is this going to affect me, my house, my neighborhood, my street? And he was like, you know what? It has always been planned that Wexford Drive would continue and would intersect with 24th Street. And he's like, but Sherwood Park was always planned to expand north. I guess my problem is this doesn't feel like an expansion of Sherwood Park. This feels like shoehorning in as many lots as you can into a small area. Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to go from it there. But it just doesn't feel the same. It feels like an afterthought, a way to sell these houses really quick and not a continuous neighborhood situation. I think there's a common goal to make Topeka a great place to live, and you guys are, this is your job. You get to make the decision of what our neighborhoods are going to look like. We can only offer our opinions. I guess if there was a magical thing that I could say, it would be I really wish the neighbors and the developer could get together and, you know, make it so both parties win. And instead of feeling like he wins or we lose, I just wish there was a way we could work together and get this solved so everybody was happy. But I guess that's you guys' decision to go to from here. Good luck and thanks for listening.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Mark Boyd.
Good evening. Mark Boyd. I'm with SBB Engineering. We are the civil consultants on this project. I guess I'd like to start off talking about lot widths, house sizes, and home values. We've heard some discussion about that tonight. There's 20 lots in this proposed subdivision that have 64 feet of frontage. With the setback requirements, that means you can put a house of 50 feet wide on that lot. Let's go up north to Miller's Glen. It's development I think we're familiar with. In that development, there are 39 of 84 lots that have less than 60 feet of street frontage. From the information that I could gather on the Shawnee County website, 25 of those lots have houses that are 46 feet wide or less. I'm pretty confident that there's more than that, but the house information wasn't there, and I know that because our company has staked many of the newer homes in that development. Of those 25 homes that have 46 feet or less in width, the assessed value on those homes range from $250,000 to $330,000. Some of them have basements, some of them are on slabs. The idea of slabs come about for ADA accessibility. That provides a zero entry home for someone that doesn't want to negotiate stairs. Doesn't mean it's a lesser value home, it just means it doesn't have a basement. It's zero entry. You guys are around infrastructure costs enough to understand what it takes to develop streets and sewers and infrastructure. Just the economics of this development. With the streets, sewer, and water and development costs, we're looking conservatively at $30,000 in a lot cost. Now take the construction of a 1,700 square foot home at today's cost. At a minimum, you're looking at a house from the get-go at $260,000 to $280,000. This is not going to be an inexpensive venture for a house. No one's going to go in there and build something that's not worth what they got in it. Well, there's been some discussion about density. I guess Mr. Fyander was correct that the subdivision does meet our subdivision design criteria and subdivision regulations. I'd also like to mention that under Topeka Code 18.6, under our dimensional standards, there is no criteria for density in the residential districts. Density doesn't factor in. And I guess to finish it up, I'd like to talk about design covenants a little bit. Mr. Rowland has developed 10 subdivisions in this area over the last 20 years, over 300 acres. And of those 10 developments that he's had, every one of them has design covenants. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's a guarantee on this one, but I think the history's there that design covenants are going to be part of this development, along with the homeowners association, because he is thinking about a partial maintenance development. I'll just end it with that. We're available if you have questions on the technical aspects of the plat.
Thank you. Councilman Emerson.
Mr. Boyd, a question. You've heard the concerns about drainage.
Yes.
Can you speak to that at all?
Well, yeah, it's a little puzzling because this development's downhill from Sherwood Park. Everything's flowing towards the detention pond that was discussed earlier. Back when Miller's Reserve was proposed, yes, this property was factored into that detention facility between Miller's Glen and Miller's Reserve. It was sized properly, engineering reviewed it, they approved it. This development comes along and we were required, not that it's in the city's policy or anything or in your design criteria, but we were required to go out and do basically an as-built of the existing detention facility to show that it has the volume to take the detention pond that's going to be removed and absorb this storm water. I'd also like to mention that the storm water, the pipes that are being brought up, Yeah, there will be pipes taking it through this subdivision, but it'll also be releasing into a natural area, which is a swale that takes it from the north side of this subdivision down to the existing detention facility. So, we're talking about the same water going to the same place eventually. It's just getting there in a different manner.
Councilman Jensen.
Does all this flow into the Shunganunga Creek? I know we have significant flooding issues with that now.
No. I can't sit here and tell you what drainage basin it is, but Shunganunga is more east and south.
Thank you.
Thank you for your, Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, Mr. Boyd, is the retention pond that we're talking about, is that the one that is just right off Indian Hills and south of kind of the clubhouse of
Yes.
Miller's Glen? That's the
Yes.
same retention pond?
Yeah, when you drive by, it looks like there's a sidewalk that leads to it, that leads over the dam.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Rick Schmidt.
Mayor and Councilman, I'm Rick Schmidt with SBB Engineering, also speaking on behalf of Mr. Rowland. I could probably add a little bit to, you had some stormwater concerns and stuff like that. I've been involved in every development that Mr. Rowland has done, with the exception of Miller's Glen. The detention pond that this Sherwood Park drains into now, when that was done, that pond was kind of what I would say kind of a temporary detention pond at the time, because Mr. Rowland knew that he was going to develop these properties to the north. And so, but that was a required detention storage area that we had to do at the time. Detention had just come on board about the time that those subdivisions were done. So that pond was built. And quite honestly, I'm glad to hear the young lady say that the pond's working right. That's always good to know. But that pond was planned to be taken out of service sometime in the future. When we did Miller's Glen, there was a detention, not Miller's Glen, but Miller's Reserve. There was a detention pond down there then that served the Miller's Glen area. The Miller's Reserve area was required to do stormwater detention and also provide for stormwater quality, which is now a part of the city's ordinance. And so when Sherwood Park was done, stormwater quality was not even thought of at the time. So now all this water is going to go down into that pond, and not only is it going to be detained down there, but it's also going to provide for stormwater quality, which is a good thing. But that pond was designed to take this pond out of service. One of the people come up and mentioned that the drainage report was rejected. That's not correct at all. When we do these subdivision plats, we submit a drainage report, and it's subject to review and comment through the city engineering staff. And it's pretty typical that there's always questions. And so that's where that was at. There was questions from the staff that we had to go out and prove that the detention pond had the capacity that we said it did, that it was designed for. And once we did that, that plan was approved. So the drainage report is approved. And so, any engineering that's done in this subdivision, it'll be subject to scrutiny by the engineering department when it's designed. So it will be done to city standards. I'm not only confident of that, I know it'll happen because that's just the way it's done. So, I know there's a lot of fear about the development of these homes in there, what the value of these homes are going to be. I'm not going to be a builder in there, but I can assure you, knowing Mr. Rowland, with my history with him, that these are not going to be what some of the emails going out there say they're going to be $150,000 homes. That ain't going to happen. These are going to be homes that are going to be just exactly in the same values of the homes to the north. Basically what Mr. Rowland told me, he says, look at Miller's Glen, that's what you're going to get with the exception of a village hall and a swimming pool. So there will be one of these lots will be dedicated to the HOA where they'll put their mailbox pods. He's hoping that they'll build a gazebo or something in there for community, but the very first lot that comes into this subdivision will be dedicated to the HOA, kind of as a community area. So that's basically what I have to offer, but, I can assure these people that these home values will not make their values go down. These houses might not be as broad in width, but they'll still be the same square footage of houses. They'll still be having the same value. They just will. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those too.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Adam Prophet. Oh, true story. Brian Fox. Now I see what you did. Thank you.
Hi, Brian Fox, 2511 Southwest Wexford Drive. My concern for years now has been Indian Hills. I started asking questions back in 2015 of the City Engineering Department, County Engineering Department. 2017, I asked City Councilmen, County Commissioners, because I felt like Indian Hills wasn't being taken care of on an improvement plan. And my fears were true. Neither entity had it on a plan and didn't up until this point when Sherwood Village became talked about. Now it's part of a recommendation to be on the 10-year CIP with an annexation. So my concern always with Indian Hills have been the safety. I drive this every day. I see bicycle traffic, pedestrian traffic. They have nowhere to walk or bike except in the traffic way or in the ditches. And you know, daily I see people literally walking in the ditches because there's no sidewalks. Years ago, city leaders did a great job, built an aquatic center in the west side of town, 21st and Urish. There's no way to bike or walk there without taking a long way around, cutting through neighborhoods or walking the ditch. So I don't let my kids go there on their own, walking or biking. So quite literally, the sidewalk ends at Indian Hills, north, south, east, or west. You can't go anywhere without walking in a ditch or on the traffic way. I believe it had been mentioned, and I think I'd seen it before, that Urish, 1 mile to the east, is on the CIP to be expanded and improved at some point in the next 10 years. I would hope that Indian Hills, since there's no development plan over on Urish, would take precedence and maybe be accelerated on the CIP, and maybe it should be a prerequisite for this development, considering the condition it's in now, and the future of this side of town, the west side of town. This is obviously where the development is happening. So I second all the comments before. I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The last person signed up to speak is Connor Saul.
Good evening. I appreciate you guys letting us talk tonight. I live at 2527 Southwest Wexford, which is about 5 houses south of where it dead ends. My main concern, along with everything that's been said tonight, there's 34, Michelle corrected me last time, 37 kids that live on our street alone, just Wexford. And they play all the time, up and down the street. And I would say 90% of the parents, just let them play, because they're all friends with everybody in the neighborhood. And that means running across the street, because, to be honest with you, we've never had to worry about it. My concern is when we connect Wexford to 24th, that's going to create, more traffic with people that aren't familiar with the street and potential injuries to kids there. that's just, I mean, that's kind of a byproduct of this, but it is a concern for the folks that live on the street. The second thing I'd like to echo from what Brian said is Indian Hills Road, I mean, to be honest, it's crap. There's two areas in particular closer to 21st Street where it's washed out twice before. One was corrected, I don't know if it was a washout or if it was a sinkhole. One was corrected, in my opinion, the right way by putting in a concrete area for the water to flow underneath and then paved over. The other one was done less good, I should say. I don't know how you put that. And was a metal pipe was put in, gravel put over it, and paved over. That is now washing out, kind of digging down from the traffic. And I think that speaks more to the amount of traffic that is on Indian Hills rather than how it was done. So with those things in mind, I mean, I wish at the meeting that they had, they would have explained more of how the houses were going to be built, you know, what their covenant was going to be, and how this was going to go together. I think that would have answered a lot of questions. I think that's where a lot of the fear came from. So I forget his name, but I appreciate the comments that he made, and that's all I have. So thank you for letting us speak.
Thank you for your comments. This concludes the section, the amount of individuals that had signed up for public comment on this matter. At this point in time, I will ask if the council has any comments or questions. Councilman Cohen.
So, Mr. City Manager, where does that put us now, Miss City Attorney?
Well, City Attorney Robinson included, there was a memo that was produced regarding the actions that the governing body can take related to this. At this point, as a discussion item, we have some time between now and when we decide to put this on the agenda. I think it would be paramount that the members of the body provide questions or concerns that they may have that they would want in order to be able to make a decision on this item. Depending on what those are over the next couple of weeks, that would indicate where this would need to be placed as far as which agenda in the month of February that we would place this on. Assuming that we place it on the agenda in February, I think we need to in order to move forward for the developer so that he has a decision from us as to the moving forward of this project for him so that he can get his necessary steps taken in order to meet his timelines. But I'll defer to the city attorney if she has any additional information that she would like to pass on.
Are you done, Councilwoman Cohen? Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Claire.
Kind of along the same line, let me make sure I understand that the plat has been approved and we have no say in that.
That's correct, Councilmember Claire. The Planning Commission approved the plat.
So we can't do anything about the plat. However, the dedications we do have. Now my question is, and I kind of understand, but if we decided not to, let's just say the pedestrian easement for a sidewalk, let's just say we said no. Now, and they have to go back then to the drawing board and do what? Just address what we said no to?
Well, the options that were outlined basically, and you spoke correctly when you talked about the dedication piece of it, and the dedications are part of the plat. So you'd be able to accept some or all of the dedications, or you could defer action to talk about modifications to the dedications, and this is all with respect to the dedications. The plat's been approved, and there's no quasi-judicial action that you take at this point. Or you refuse to move forward after it's been deferred and you've given some conditions or thoughts on the deferral. But if some or all of the dedications are refused, then the plat can't be recorded. So, I mean, that process can't go forward for the developer if you refuse some or all of them. So,
but it said he'd go back and submit, he can revise it, but does he just revise the part that we did not approve?
You can pick and choose what
out of those four.
Yes.
5.
Correct. Out of the 5 dedications that are listed that were part of the
plat. So he could go back and revise those
maybe Bill
5.
can better, but yes.
But as far as the plat goes, we have no
The
say
plat's
so.
done.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you. Is this in your district, Mr. Cohen?
Not yet.
You're right, because we're annexing. You're right, because we're annexing. You know, I can appreciate discussion on this, and this has been tough for me. But what I like the most, I think it was Michelle Fox that said, if we could have a win-win situation, if we could sit down with the contractor. I don't know, I don't understand why it's too late. I know you guys want to come up with all those legalities. And I liked the part where he says, we are not opposed to the growth and development of our city. And sometimes it just sounds like if we're just misunderstood, you know, that's a big part of it. I mean, they're scared of their house flooding. You got somebody saying they are, they got somebody saying they're not. You got somebody, you know, it doesn't sound like they don't want development, but maybe not as much. And I don't know, can we send this back and have a town hall meeting? Is it too late for that?
We cannot send it back, Councilmember Ortiz, to the planning commission. But I think what the city manager was kind of throwing out there is perhaps taking some time to walk through some of the dedications and see if there was any kind of meeting of the minds that could happen with regard to those. I don't know if there is or not. I'm not that familiar with, you know, what's occurred as far as discussions between the developer and planning staff and the neighbors, but I think that's what you were proposing.
Anytime we can do that, it's a win-win for all of us, you know, so that they're heard and they're understood, and we hear the developer, because this has been empty for a long time, you know, and that concerns me. So that's just something, I don't know how we do it, Jeff, but I think it needs to be done. I mean, and I would like another hearing in front of the body so that we all hear it and we all get an understanding of that, to be fair to the developer and to the neighbors. But how we do it, I don't know. That's the mayor's problem, and I'm sure she'll handle it. Thank you.
Councilman Jensen?
Thank you, Your Honor. So a couple of quick comments. I have an excellent friend, a very close one, who lives in Miller's Glen. That is a retirement community. He's the youngest person in there by like 30 years. Those houses are packed intentionally close together because they're not supposed to have yards. So comparing what is intended to be, you know, not a retirement community to a retirement community, these are apples and oranges. So, I appreciate the insight in, you know, the proposed home values and the density, but unless you're building a retirement village specifically, these are awful close together if you're trying to target that at young families with kids who need yards to run and play in. I would really love to have some cartoon engineering on Indian Hills. I recognize that it takes 3 years to do a street project, but I feel at the very least we probably owe these folks some kind of a rough idea and a realistic timeline. You know, again, we've talked about just having no plans for streets really drives people crazy. So at the very least, if we could have something, some idea of what we're going to do with Indian Hills and when this comes up again, that would really at least help me make a decision in terms of where we're going. Another question I have is there, you know, we talked about there are only a couple of places where these two neighborhoods need to connect. I would like some more information on why they need to connect at all. Again, if we're talking about two different types of neighborhoods, perhaps they don't need to connect at all, and maybe that would alleviate some of the concerns. So another option is we haven't talked about any kind of barrier, you know, landscaping, that sort of thing. We talk about that when we transition from commercial to residential, from industrial to commercial, that sort of thing. If we're going to build two completely different types of subdivisions, which, you know, even if it's a slight change in density, it's different. Maybe that's an option to sort of give some people differentiation between the two property types. So just some comments. We'd love to hear some feedback before we get further down the line with this. Thank you.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Manager, is it possible to have some staff that at least is here to stick around after the meeting since we're about done and speak to some of the people that may want to hang around and talk to them afterwards?
If there are questions specifically to that, we could have individuals that may be able to answer their questions.
Okay.
Councilman Mays.
Not to speak on that, but I've got a couple of other things. Thank you, Mayor, by the way. A couple things I wanted to mention as well and ask. When are we discussing the CIP?
The CIP workshop will be held on February 9th.
Okay. But like, when do we vote on it? When will we, any idea?
It would probably be the first meeting in April. I think the schedules, I remember right. We'll be having a second discussion regarding it, first meeting in March, and get final consideration in April.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because I think there are a lot of valid concerns with Indian Hills Road. I know a lot of people that live out there, and it probably should, with the size of the developments with Sherwood Park and then also the Indian Hills neighborhood to the east of there, I think it probably should have been considered a decade ago. The comment about Urish Road, I think, is valid. When you look at Urish Road on this, I'm looking at a satellite image, I mean, a good chunk of that is just golf course, and then the pool at the other end, fire station. There's not a lot of residential traffic, and there is on Indian Hills. So I think all of those concerns are valid. I also understand there was one comment made earlier about how this is called Sherwood Village, but it really is an extension of Sherwood Park. And when you look at it on the map, it looks like it's more or less rounding out that edge of the neighborhood. And part of me wonders why it's not being called Sherwood Park, because if I'm not mistaken, Sherwood Park was built in phases over the last 20 years anyways. So why isn't this just being called Sherwood Park? And then, I mean, when you look at the map also, it appears that Chauncey Drive, sort of at the western edge of the neighborhood, is probably going to be connected at some point too. So I'd be interested to know why we're stopping at Berkshire and not just rounding it out all the way. And those are all, I guess, questions for the developers not here. So perhaps they can't be answered tonight, but I'd be interested to maybe get a follow-up from somebody. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager, would it be possible, I think that there seems to be consensus with regards to having an activity in which maybe the developer, the residents of the neighborhood, and maybe some experts in the areas of concerns that the neighbors have expressed, just to have an opportunity just to sit down. It seems like with regards to the plotting, there is nothing that we could do at this point in time. However, when it comes to having the discussion so that developer could have a conversation with the residents and also the expert, it seems like once the expert spoke, there were some fears that were alleviated. And it seems that maybe there is a desire for more understanding from those experts and maybe a little bit more reassurance. Would that be something that we could coordinate?
I could contact the developer and see whether or not he'd be willing to meet to go through that.
Okay.
I mean, that's up to him, whether he'd be willing to pursue that. So, and I think, I believe they had a meeting to discuss this prior as they were looking at that, reading some of the information. So I don't know what, obviously there are new issues that, as it's been further developed, have been brought forward. So maybe we can correct or alleviate some of them.
So from my perspective, I will say that when I was listening to the concerns that the residents had, I agree with Councilman Mays with the sense of Indian Hills does seem to be a significant concern. Those are some of the concerns that Councilwoman Ortiz has in her neighborhoods, where we have neighborhoods like East Edge that have high density of families, and there is absolutely no sidewalks, and we have children walking through those neighborhoods, and we're trying to mitigate that. So absolutely, if we have the opportunity to take a look at our CIP to see how we can, in the process of developing, start mitigating some of those issues so that we don't have those problems in the future. Absolutely, I think it's extremely important. Another of the items that was brought up to the attention of the body was the concerns with flooding. And I will say to the homeowner that made the comment that said, you should have thought about this when you moved here. I'm sorry that that was the level of customer service that you received. I hope that that was not a City of Topeka engineer that made that statement. And somebody shaking their head saying no, but that was still a person that was mediating on behalf of the City of Topeka. And I want not only our partners to know, but I would also want for our staff to understand that what is expected of every single employee of the City of Topeka is utmost customer service. We can absolutely disagree. However, disagreement does not mean that we are unkind to each other in that process. So for you who were treated poorly, I do want to say that I am sorry. That being said, I think that there is also some concern with regards to how the situation is being managed and how the flooding mitigation is going to be addressed. And it seems like that was already addressed a little bit, but it seems like more information with regards to that so that there's peace for the neighborhood is necessary. However, I will say this. I want to mention a few names. I want to mention Potwin, one of the richest neighborhoods in this city. Is a neighborhood that has very little density mixed with neighborhoods that have a lot of density. And it makes the fabric of our city amazing. I want to also mention Briarwood, which is where I live. I live on Briarwood, have a corner lot home, and I think that 2 blocks, my daughter walks 2 blocks and she passes through Briarwood Apartments, and she passes through Briarcliff as well. One of the things that makes a community successful is the richness of the neighborhoods that are all around us. And in diversity and in including our neighbors in, whether they may or may not be of the same socioeconomic impact, I think that is one of those things and markers that makes our communities great. Having worked in Habitat for Humanity, I have encountered concerns several times of neighbors concerned about us putting a Habitat home in a neighborhood that maybe was not meeting the valuations of the houses around. But I can tell you that this is not the case here. I'm not saying that that is the case, but what I'm saying is that what I have found is that when those valuations are occurring, they're basically done on houses that are similar to the size of the houses that are in the neighborhood that you're evaluating. Seldom do you take a house that maybe is 2,000 square foot and you evaluate it the same way that you value a house that's like 3,000 square foot. So I want for all of you to rest assured that your evaluation is not going to be affected if you end up having a house that may have a little bit of a lesser value than yours. And I know, based on the beautiful character that all of you displayed here, that all of you would be welcoming of any sort of neighbor that will come to you in that neighborhood. So that being said, thank you so much, all of you, for being here tonight. Councilwoman Hiller.
That was a wonderful speech. I do have a couple of questions and a couple of points. One is Indian Hills a county road or a city road?
Township, I think.
I mean, it's a township road?
It used to be. So
understand that it's not as simple as just coming to the city and talking about us improving a road that's not even a city road. So that could be more complicated than we were imagining just talking about it. And it's also not impossible. I grew up in an area where subdivisions were developing, and even here, West 10th Street was 2 lanes with ditches. West 6th Street is still, just transitioning. It can take a while to get that done. It's not ideal. That's one of the reasons the county has joined with the city in adopting complete street standards, which include providing room for turning and for passing, for transit stops and for sidewalks and so on. It is still couched with it being cost effective, but we've made a lot of progress in the kind of standards that we're jointly looking at today that are different than they were before. So the other question that I had, and thanks for the answer on Indian Hills, is, and if Mayor, it needs to come through you perhaps, but whether people felt like they were adequately noticed. We've worked really hard as a city to have policies for the advanced meetings where first the developer would meet with the affected parties and then the planning commission, so that there are not new items and new things coming up when they get to us. However, I did some checking just briefly with Bill, and apparently it sounds like there are at least 4 organized neighborhood associations close by. I checked at the beginning of the meeting. None of them are registered with the city. And apparently, at least when the city advises folks about giving notices, they use that list that our neighborhood relations department has. So I wanted to, it looks like the group here is pretty representative, but I wanted to make sure, maybe just with a nod of heads, whether people think people got enough notice from the beginning about this process. Because what we've tried to do is there's a certain number of feet around whatever the proposed development is, but then there would be a notice to the neighborhood association leaders for any organized neighborhood associations around. That might have helped a little bit. I just wanted to ask that question so people knew, because I really do think, I'm very impressed with the folks from the neighborhoods that spoke. You're very reasonable, your thoughts were clear, yet the concerns are pretty normal when a new subdivision's going to come in and you live right next to it and you're used to looking at green grass and trees. I felt also that the planning department head did a really good job of talking about traffic and what the counts realistically would be with the through streets and so on. But it did sound like talking that through a little more might help, and our planning people can do that as well as others, I'm sure. I felt like the consulting engineers did a really good job of obviously of designing the runoff in the first round, but being able to talk about that in as much detail as anybody would want in terms of what that second design would do and where that water would go, as well as the difference between the houses on basements and on slabs, and the different styles and how they fit on the lots. And so I just wanted to give credit to everybody involved because I was impressed with that, but more than one said that more conversation might help, and however that could be structured, I hope that you all can appreciate what everybody's bringing to the table and make some progress.
Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I believe that is a township, used to be Mission Township, because, don't quote me because that's been a long time ago and I got yelled at for damaging the street with a machine. So it was Mission Township at the time, though. But I was just going to say, first of all, I do appreciate the testimony the neighbors gave. And first of all, I like it that it was respectful. I've been to a lot of meetings, usually on the other side, and sometimes people can get rude and angry and stuff. I appreciate the decorum you guys showed. One thing I think we need to keep in mind, though, is, this is a developer who developed the area you guys are in, who developed Miller's Glen and Miller's Reserve. This is not a fly-by-night operation. This is a local, reputable, high-quality developer. So just keep that in mind. It is, from being on the other side, it is very, very tough anywhere to economically develop a subdivision. By the time you get your infrastructure in and everything, and divided by the number of lots you have, it is tough. It is tough to make a buck. It really is. Nobody's getting rich on development unless you got the land for free. The last thing is, I'll just tell you a quick story. Back in 1991 or 92, the first development that my company did was on the corner of 21st and Indian Hills Road. And it was Lowell Miller was a developer. And we no sooner got that done, and there's somebody across the street, and the neighbors were concerned, we don't want anything built on the west side of the street there, which is now where all you guys live. So I do understand it's always scary, and that's not it's just human nature. I mean, I'd be the same way if something was getting built down the street from me, so I totally understand it, but sometimes you got to look at, too, who's doing the things, and if the guys, if the people have done the quality things in the past, they're probably going to do quality things in the future, so that means a lot to me at least, but thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Bill, could you clarify in the map in our packet, is the light blue not the city of Topeka boundary? Because that covers the vast majority of Indian Hills Road. And if I'm wrong, that's fine. There's no key in the map, so I just generally assume that was city limits. But if it's not, then everyone's right. Indian Hills would not be our responsibility.
You're talking about, excuse me, the map that shows
this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So
in terms of where the city boundary is, no, that is correct. We kind of go in and out there.
All right. So that's a massive chunk of Indian Hills that would be our responsibility to resolve and improve. So that's what I'm asking for some ideas on how much and when, or what we need to do and when, because
It's complicated.
I agree. That's an awful big chunk that's our responsibility. So I'd like to see us step up and take responsibility. Thank you.
Councilman Cohen, I think you had additional statements? No? Councilman Lesser?
No, the only thing I had to add to it is I wanted to thank everyone for coming out as well. Interestingly enough, as I was looking at this map as we were talking and you're giving me your locations, interestingly enough, I was the 12th house built in Sherwood Park, back where I used to live. 78, 28 Southwest 27th, right on the corner across from the park. So, and it's just amazing, how much it has changed and built on beyond where that was at when we were at. I was looking at, I think, where the foxes lived. There used to be a hedgerow back there, and I used to sit back there with my shotgun for pheasants, actually, believe it or not. So, but I think what I did want to say is I tend to agree. Indian Hills Road was dangerous when I lived back there, and this was 1998. And I used to, ride my bike with my daughter and stuff. So I do understand that, and I am conscientious about your concerns, and I think. But I also do want to say though that, as Mr. Emerson had said. I think if we can get on the same page with this developer and his people and share your concerns with him, I do know enough of his reputation. He's not going to want people to have, building houses that creates a liability for him that you're going to have 6 inches of water in your house and stuff like that. So I think hopefully, as one of you spoke as well, there, when we talked about some of the covenants and stuff, that there's some information that was going around here, I think, that everybody didn't understand necessarily, wasn't on the same page. So whatever I can do to help with this, I'm happy to do so. But I do appreciate you coming out and voicing your concerns so we can try to, rectify what concerns you have and at least address them. Thank you.
City Manager.
Doug and the finance director have been looking at some information to help with this as far as answering questions related to Urish work and also Indian Hills. Urish is in 2023 for design. In 2024 is when we would be looking at utilities and those kind of issues related to the right-of-way and so forth. And the year 2025 would be when construction would be occurring related to Urish. So that covers that. And then also Indian Hills is in our 6 through 10 part of our CIP. So we have had Indian Hills on the radar as far as a project that needs to be done. But obviously saying it's in years 6 through 10, it's in the out years. But it is something that we've been aware that we need to address in the future. So that's where those two projects stand.
Thank you. So it seems that, again, wrapping up this item, first of all, again, we appreciate the homeowners that came over here and spoke to us, because I think that it provides us the opportunity to have city manager trying to contact not only the developer, but also bring back the engineers and the experts to have a conversation with the residents so that we could just lay to rest all the other concerns that are remaining before we move forward. So what I would look for head nodding, since this is not an action item from the body, is that once we have a report that the residents have been engaged and that we have some sort of resolution, amicable resolution, maybe it not be 100% perfect, but some sort of resolution to the situation, then it would be brought back to the agenda as an item for voting. And again, if and when that item occurs, the citizens will have an opportunity yet again to speak, should you feel like there was no resolution. But we would not proceed with this item until we have heard from staff that there has been some sort of communication established. So the same way that I look for nodding heads here in the body, and it seems like everybody is in accordance with that, I will look at all of you and look for nodding heads. All right, I even got a thumbs up. So that being said, I think that, thank you. Oh, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Madam Mayor, I just, Because some of them said that they have not been notified, if they could notify the clerk's office, their contact information, so we will make sure that we include everybody or however many homeowners associations that they have. That would be very important, because we don't want to exclude anybody. So I wanted to say that. If you could get a hold of the clerk and just so that we can identify you guys or more residents or whatever. Thanks.
Thank you. This concludes the items on the agenda. We now move forward to announcements. City Clerk? No preliminary agenda. City Manager?
I have nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Really quick, yesterday, Councilman Mays, myself, Councilman Hiller were at the inaugural ball for Governor Kelly and for all of the new individuals that were recently elected into the state offices. It was a night of a lot of celebration, probably one of the largest events that they've had. They had to add 2 more rooms in order.
3 governor's balls.
Yes. So it seemed that last night, regardless of party affiliation, there were individuals from both parties there. But it seemed like there was a spirit of joy for our state of Kansas. And, of people talking about working together across the aisles. And one of the things that I found that was very interesting, that I think is very much exemplified here in this body of the council, is that the state of Kansas is known for being one of those moderate states in which people are willing to work together. And my hope and my prayer is that as we move on, like they said, yesterday was day 1, today was day 2, everybody still looks happy, that by the end of the session that we still maybe look tired, but still look like we've been able to talk to each other throughout the process. And that is my request to our friends. We had breakfast with the legislators as they were walking in. I want to thank Go Topeka, not only Go Topeka, but the Greater Topeka Partnership and all the other organizations that came and spent time with us so that we could just continue building on those relationships. The City of Topeka will continue working on our legislative agenda. We're not only doing it on our own, we're working with the League of Kansas Municipalities. We just recently had Whitney Damron come and talk to us about what we are working at over there. So just know that we're feet on the ground, and we just want to welcome yet again every single person that is coming from across the state of Kansas to be here in the city of Topeka. There's a lot of great things happening downtown. There's a lot of great things happening all over our city. So we just invite you to enjoy of the beautiful people that we have in this community. I want to say thank you again to Deputy Mayor, and I want to congratulate Deputy Mayor Clear. And hopefully Code Minion happens soon, because I know that you guys are looking forward to that huge celebration to happen. With that being said, Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind everybody there's no meeting next week. But I do look forward to seeing this on a future agenda. Thanks to the Sherwood Park residents that came and voiced your concerns. And congratulations, Deputy Mayor and the JADO member, the voting members.
Councilman Lesser.
The only thing I really have is my condolence go to a friend of mine, John Ambrosio. Lost his wife last night after a valiant battle with cancer. So my thoughts are with him.
Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I too wanted to give credit to the experience of Governor Kelly's inauguration. A number of us were at the inauguration itself, and certainly anybody who drives down 10th Street has seen the Capitol decked out with banners that are to replicate those that were hanging on the 50th anniversary of Brown v. Board. We were coming up on the 65th. It was exciting to see those banners highlighting that what's important is education, equality, and opportunity. And it was just very, very heartening and just to center that administration and where we're all moving forward on that was exciting to me. And it was really cold out there, but nonetheless, the crowd was pretty excited, and nobody got hurt with the 19-gun salute. On those lines, Living the Dream is this week. It started yesterday, and we'll go through the banquet this Saturday and various events this weekend. And I think it's the 43rd year, once again, one of the largest celebrations in the United States. And continuous, to the great credit of Topekans and all the volunteers that put that together. We will have a 3-week break. We actually don't have meetings for 2 weeks, and in that break, besides the pending arrival of baby Jensen, which will be cool, the Cyrus Hotel, for instance, downtown is due to open on the 29th, and that is amazing. Anybody who hasn't been downtown lately, you can't find a parking space on Saturday night. What? It's going to get worse, but pretty soon the parking plan will come out, right, Doug? Okay, thank you. That's it.
Deputy Mayor Claire.
I want to thank you all for coming out. It really makes our job easier when we hear from people in the public. And so thank you for coming. Thank you for voting for me and entrusting these responsibilities to me. And I
have a list for you.
I bet you do. I have no doubt. And thank you, Jensen, for your past service. And I look forward to it.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I too would like to thank Mr. Jensen. He had some corny jokes, but it made the time go on. I just wanted to give condolences to Gary Clark's family. You know, I had people at work said, "Who was he?" And he was a fine man if you ever met him and got to talk to him. And we were lucky to have him as a zoo director. I also wanted to know, City Manager, can you give us an update on the Kansas Avenue Bridge? I have a lot of people that at our next meeting maybe that ask about it. Is it safe to go over it, under it, around it, or what? So I'd just like to see that, so we can give that to the people if we could. And this will be another great weekend for sports in Kansas. You know, the KU Jayhawks and on Saturday, and the Kansas City Chiefs. So if we get snowed in, it'll just be great. What more can you ask for, Mr. Henderson?
Mr. Henderson or Emerson?
Absolutely, Ms. Ortiz. Thank you for the introduction. The biggest thing happening in District 4 prior to start before we meet next time is that the Southeast 29th Street project is going to start. And I met with Tom Flanagan a few days ago about that, and probably the best way to describe it, it's going to be a real mess for a while. They're going to shut down basically, different portions of 29th will be shut down. So I would recommend if anyone's going to go out to Lake Shawnee, go to Wittenberg Road or go to Croco Road to access it. Once that project starts, that'll really help. It's a county project, but a gentleman named Tom Flanagan, a former city engineer, fantastic guy. It's his swan song. He's retiring after this. But we're lucky to have him. It'll be a great project for everyone out there, but it's going to be a mess for the next 2 years. So it'll go quick. Thanks.
Councilman Jensen?
Well, I want to thank you all for making my year as deputy mayor fun, entertaining, and challenging. I really enjoyed it. The folks that put together the proposal of alternative solutions, you know, so many people come up and just complain about something but never offer any other ideas. This is fantastically well put together. You know, I don't know the outcome of this particular endeavor, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do the research and come up with different ideas. I mean, this is fantastic. We very rarely get outside opinions for things like that, so I really appreciate it. To the council, thank you so much for the surprise presence. Let me tell you, it was tough to get her here, but it was totally worth it when you drug her up here. So that was absolutely fantastic. I also want to thank you all for canceling the next couple of meetings so that hopefully we can meet the schedule. You know, when I announced this, I said we were on a tight schedule and an even tighter budget, and so far we've blown the budget, and maybe we'll make the schedule. So, but with that, it will be an exciting time. We'll announce what we're having, how much it weighs as soon as it gets here. The only last thing I would add is for Christmas, my lovely bride got me a book of dad jokes, but I'm not allowed to read the dad jokes until I'm actually a dad. So with any luck, I'll be armed and dangerous when we get back. Have a great week, everybody.
Please no. Councilman Hayes.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor, and also the members of JADO. I also want to wish congratulations to Governor Kelly and the other statewide officers that were sworn in on Monday. And you're right, the inaugural ball was a fantastic event. It went off without a hitch, at least from my perspective. And I did run into Commissioner Cook at the inaugural ball, who reminded me that 4 years from now, when we have another one, we should not have the need for an overflow room, because the expo center portion will be like double the size. Also wanted to commend Dr. Peak and his staff on the snow removal efforts in conjunction with the inaugural. City manager told me they were focusing on the areas that were going to get the increased traffic with the hotels and the Great Overland Station for the Sunday night event. And I feel like it went flawlessly. It was great. So congratulations on that, and that's all I've got.
I forgot to make two quick remarks. Councilmember Padilla is not here, and it is because he is at the Bloomberg Harvard Fellowship alongside with 7 other Topekans, strategizing on how to make Momentum 2022 happen. We talked about Martin Luther King Day, and I am not going to be here, so city manager is going to make double remarks, so he's got double duty this time. I am going to be doing the Rodell Fellowship at Aspen, learning how to be a better policymaker for all of you. So I will come back with reports like I always like to do, so that you guys know what I've been learning. And finally, I do want to also echo the sentiments of Gary Clark. What a great guy. Camp Cowabunga is the vision of his dreams and his experiences in Africa. And what a beautiful way to be remembered. Every single time that we walk into that zoo and we see Camp Cowabunga, his spirit is going to be there. So thank you to the Clark family for just supporting such a wonderful man in our community. So that being said, there were no public comments. Individuals signed up for public comments after the meeting. We do have the need to recess into executive sessions. At this point in time, I would like the city attorney to read the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 45 minutes to discuss confidential employment matters pertaining to non-elected personnel as justified by KSA 75-4319B1 in order to protect the privacy of those discussed. To aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, and no action will be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session, but before we do that, I'd like to make sure that we extend our meeting. I'm afraid it might go past 10. So I'd like to do that first, to extend our meeting till we're complete with our agenda.
So we have, prior to the motion of the executive session, we think that we're going to be a little bit long. Our ordinances state that our rules state that we're not going to exceed 10 o'clock meetings. So we have a motion to extend past 10 o'clock. We have a motion by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilmember Emerson. If we could all just proceed with voting.
What are we voting on, the extension or the?
On the extension. Right now, we're voting on the extension.
We have 7 yes.
7 voting yes, the motion still passes. At this point in time, we will vote to recess into executive session. The first session, hopefully not to exceed 45 minutes. We have a motion by Councilwoman Ortiz.
Could we have a 15-minute recess so that
We will.
members of the body can talk to the members in the audience?
I was going to provide us a recess. Thank you very much. Not to exceed 45 minutes for the first one. If everybody would please vote. We had a motion in a second.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. At this time, it's 8:43. We will take a 15-minute recess before we begin our executive session. This would allow the council a rest and a chance to talk to our residents.
Oh, perfect. So, thank you. I appreciate that.
only for the purpose of re-engaging in the same executive session under the same parameters for a period of time not to exceed 30 minutes. Do we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilman Emerson, a second by Councilman Jensen. All those in favor of resuming the executive session, raise your right hand. We have Councilmember Cohen in the back that has done the same. The motion passes unanimously. We will now resume an executive session not to exceed 30 minutes.
Stood here and talked.
The executive session has concluded. No action has been taken. This meeting is adjourned.